domestic oil production is up by more than 300,000 barrels a day. That's a lot of barrels. I see you down close to $60 a barrel, and you'll be breaking that pretty soon.
President Trump today touting climbing oil production in the U.S. and lower gas and energy prices as a result.
It comes as the administration ramps up its efforts to refill America's emergency oil stash. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve currently holds just over 400 million barrels of crude as Trump builds it back up. Nearly half of its peak of 727 million after recorded drawdowns under Joe Biden to artificially lower gas prices just before the election.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright, under this administration, warning it could take years and $20 billion to undo some of that Biden damage. Joining us now to discuss, Fox Business contributor Phil Flynn. Phil, good to see you. I think a lot of Americans were alarmed by what they saw under the last administration. It really did feel like an election-minded gambit, and now we want to make sure that that strategic reserve is refilled. What does this look like in your mind?
Fill it up, fill it up. It's about time, right? And it did do a lot of damage. Not only damaging the salt mines or the salt domes where we held this oil, it damaged the market and it damaged the U.S. oil producer. You know, and the standard to lower prices to win a few votes, hey, it was great for a little while. We had lower gasoline prices. But what we're seeing right now is that the U.S. oil producers are having a harder time responding, to lower prices. If the market was allowed to work, U.S. energy producers would have risen to the occasion, met that demand. But because of this manipulation, the market's a little bit broken, and we have a dislocation. We have inventories that are low, supplies that are high, but we've got U.S. producers that have to cut back because the market isn't working correctly.
Phil, you said fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. But how difficult is it to fill it up? Outside of the cost, walk us through some of the challenges in doing that.
Well, it's very difficult, especially when you're telling the market you want to do it. President Trump today said he thought oil prices could go below 60. I think he's hoping that he can get this price at below 50. But not only is there the cost, which is going to be close to $20 billion, you have to spend $100 million to undo the damage that the Biden administration did to the salt mines. And then you have to contract these barrels out in such a way where it's not going to drive up prices, right? You can't go to the refiners and say, hey, give me 280 million barrels of oil. It doesn't work that way. Otherwise, there'd be a huge spike. But I think it's critical here because we have to support the U.S. energy producers. We can refill this reserve over a period of time, and this is going to be huge, and it's going to help support our producers. Let's face it, they're struggling right now. Yeah, they're raising production, but their profitability is going down. The rig counts are going down. So this would be a big boost to U.S. energy producers and a big boost for the economy because there's nothing better for the U.S. economy than U.S. barrels of oil.
Phil, I just want to remind people, back in 2020, first time Trump was president, he tried to buy low and refill even further the petroleum reserve. And at the time, Roll Call wrote this, I'll quote, "The Trump administration's plan to top off the strategic petroleum reserve ran into a blockade Wednesday after lawmakers excluded $3 billion in funding." The story goes on. Senate Democrats took credit for stripping out that money from the bill, calling it a bailout for the oil industry. So that's what they did back then, opposing Trump. He probably was right back then, wasn't he?
He was. I think the price back there could have been like $24 or $26 a barrel, right? This is after the oil prices collapsed. And President Trump's a businessman. At that point, a lot of U.S. energy producers could have gone out of business because of COVID and a price war. And at that time, you really have to thank President Trump because without his leadership in the global energy market at this time, we could have lost the majority of our oil industry. And at that time, the way the Democrats, we don't like big oil, they're bad guys, we don't need them, they tried to bury the U.S. energy industry. And I think Americans remember that now.
It's just a long list of Trump was right about everything, basically. So, Phil Flynn, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think he's going to be right about his oil call as well.
Yeah.